Hi, I'm Emily and welcome to the Pepper Knits Knitting Podcast. I am a knitter based in Perth in Western Australia and thank you for joining me for episode 20. It has been quite some time since I have sat down and filmed a traditional formatted podcast. I was sharing Vlogmas videos throughout December, which was really fun, and before that I had a little bit more free time during my day, so I was kind of doing like a hybrid between a vlog and a podcast. But my work has gotten quite busy over the past couple of months, so I don't think I'm going to have as much free time during my day to share that type of content. And I also have so much to catch you up on since I shared my last episode of Vlogmas, so I thought it would be good to just sit down and get you up to date on my projects. I have 3 finished objects and kind of like 2 or 3-ish whips that I wanted to share today. So my first finished object is what I'm wearing. This is the city top designed by Tori Yu, and I knit this in the Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the colour Purple Elephant. I've had this yarn in stash for over a year when I decided to knit this. And I originally bought it to make another 9pm tank, which is kind of like my staple tank top that I knit for summer. I've knit 2 of them in the same yarn in different colours, but I wasn't sure if I necessarily needed a third one, and I was also a little bit unsure about this colour. I realised I have a ready-to-wear dress in kind of a similar colour to this that I do quite like and I wear quite a bit. So I decided to swatch this yarn and ended up just going for it, and I'm quite glad I did because I really love how this project turned out. I really like this type of higher neckline, which is not something that I have really knit or worn before, but I thought I would give it a go. I also really love the shaping and how this cuts in here, but it's not like super exaggerated, which I don't think is something I would get a lot of wear out of. The front is exactly the same as the back, so technically it is a reversible top, which is great. It also has a twisted rib panel that runs all the way down each side of the body, and that mimics the twisted rib that's going on at the neckline and on the hem, and also the small straps are twisted rib as well. It's not something I particularly noticed or picked up on in the pattern pictures, like the sample pictures and the pictures that I've seen on Instagram, but I do actually quite like it. I was considering omitting it because I did kind of just assume that this is plain stockinette, but I'm quite glad I added it in there. I think it adds just a little bit of visual interest, and of course it's a little bit more exciting to knit on because it just breaks up the stockinette on the body a little bit. So I pretty much knit this exactly to pattern. I think the recommended yarn is a cotton and wool that's probably a little bit heavier. The Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino can tend to be, I think, on the lighter fingering weight side than a typical fingering weight, but does mean you get quite a good meterage out of each ball. So yeah, I pretty much followed the pattern exactly for this. I used the recommended needle size. I swatched on the recommended size, which is a 3.5 and also a 3.25. I felt like the fabric on the 3.5 was a little bit loose, and perhaps I would want something a little bit more dense to be a tad more wearable. However, I did manage to get gauge on the 3.5, and to be honest, I just wanted this to be really easy holiday knitting where I didn't have to redo any of the numbers or like regrade the pattern based on my gauge and then be worried about the fit of it the whole time. So I did just go for the 3.5. And I have to say I'm quite glad that I stuck to that and didn't try and redo everything. It did make it, first of all, a really simple project, which I definitely needed when I was in holiday mode. And I think it also does create quite a nice open and airy fabric. And with the style of this, it's something that I wear on quite warm days. So if it was a denser fabric, perhaps it wouldn't be as cool and easy to wear on those hot days. I think the color I chose as well, it's not like a super see-through fabric either. Maybe if I'd gone for a lighter color, like if I was knitting in a cream or an off-white, maybe it would be beneficial to go down and create a bit of a denser fabric. But yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with the fabric. I have already worn this quite a few times and I've already needed to wash it because it did stretch out a little bit, which I think is fairly common with this type of yarn. But as soon as I washed it, it has like cinched back into the original size that it was. I've also worn it on some warmer days as well, and I haven't found that the merino content has made me too warm. This is definitely my favorite summer yarn. Not that I have tried a whole range to really compare it to, but I just feel like it's a safe choice. I know I'm going to like the fabric, and I know that I can get a good color selection to find something that I like, so I just keep going back to it for those reasons. I will say that it's not the most bra friendly type of tank top, which did put me off wanting to knit it at like the beginning of summer, but I thought I'd give it a go and try, you know, a bit of a different type of style. I'm wearing it with a strapless bra at the moment, and whilst it's not like the most comfortable thing I've ever worn, I have worn this for full days and to meetings and things, and it's been absolutely fine. I can, you know, get through the day okay. But of course, you can wear whatever you like. If you're not someone who minds having bra straps showing, I don't think anyone else should care either. But because I do really like the shaping of the front here, I didn't want to have bra straps like interrupting the shape of that. Like I said, I do wear it to meetings and things. I think because there is so much coverage up here, I feel super comfortable wearing it, but it's also great for really hot days where I do want a good amount of airflow and ventilation in my tops. I did make a tiny modification to the length. I ended up adding, I think, about 1 or 2 extra centimeters of stockinette onto the body, just because when I was trying it on, I felt like it was a little bit too cropped, even with high-waisted shorts and pants, which is mostly what I wear. And I knew I'd probably want this to be work appropriate as well. So I just definitely wanted to make sure that it was going to be long enough, as I have a tendency to make my summer knits way too cropped for them to be work appropriate. And even on casual days, sometimes I just don't want to be wearing something super cropped. So yeah, I added a little bit of extra length in the stockinette. And then I did the bottom ribbing, which is meant to be the same length as what you're doing up on the neckline, which is obviously quite short. I then did a mid-project block just to check how much length I would get out of this after blocking, which I didn't think would be a huge amount, but I just did that block anyway to check before I did the tubular bind off. And I'm actually quite glad I did, because I ended up basically doubling the length of the ribbing on the bottom. And yeah, in the end, I think that looks quite good, because it is like proportional, I suppose, to the top. Like, it's twice the length. It doesn't look unusual. It doesn't look like I accidentally made it too long. I think it looks quite intentional, and yeah, it does mean that now I have the perfect length on this. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I did knit the first size in the pattern, and I think I get a really good amount of ease in here. I should definitely check how much ease I have. I'm fairly sure it has a little bit of negative ease, but it doesn't feel super tight, and I feel like I can move around in it very easily. I would definitely knit another one of these tops. It was a really fun construction, and I really enjoyed following Tori's pattern writing style. It's the first time I've knit something from this designer, and yeah, very easy to follow and a very well written pattern. There are also instructions to knit this into a dress length, and I think it comes with hip shaping as well, because it looks like it fits everyone I've seen on Ravelry really well. Probably not something I see myself knitting, at least not this summer, but you know, at least I think it gives you the option to have both patterns, and you only need to purchase the one pattern to basically get 2 in 1. I don't think I have much more to say about this. I'm glad that I have one summer knit that has been finished for this summer, and it's one that I think I can see myself wearing quite a lot. The summer knits I've knit previously have not really gotten much wear this year at all, which is a bit of a shame, and at least it's made me consider why I'm not wearing some of those, or things that I would want to improve on. But I feel like this has been a good win and a good start to summer knitting. So my next finished object is very exciting, and it's the one that I was working on a lot through Vlogmas and even before then, and it is my Cara Wrap cardigan. I should probably get a hanger to properly show this off. It kind of looks a bit better, but I definitely will put in some photos to like show off how this properly looks when it's on, because this is not doing it justice. This is a very exciting project because it is my bridal cardigan. If you're new here, I am getting married in less than 2 months, which is so exciting. I have really enjoyed planning this wedding. I'm gonna be kind of sad when it's over, because what am I gonna do? I've just been enjoying planning this so much. And of course, I needed to have some knitting included in the wedding. I kind of knew from the start that I would probably end up going with a wrap cardigan, just because I think they look really nice over dresses, and you know, they look a little bit more dressy. It's not just like a regular v-neck or crew neck cardigan. There are a lot of beautiful like bridal versions of those cardigans out there, but I just had in my head that I would want a wrap cardigan. There were quite a few patterns on the table when I was thinking about which pattern I was going to pick to be my bridal cardigan. The main two contenders were the Robinson wrap by Handmade by Florence and the Late Summer wrap by Knitting for Olive. However, I ended up going for the Cara Wrap cardigan by Rebecca Clow, and she is my all-time favorite designer. I feel like I'm such a stalker. I'm always liking her posts, I'm tagging her in my posts on Instagram, I'm watching her podcast and knitting her designs, but I genuinely just love all of her designs. They're things that I want to knit, and even if I didn't know that they were designed by her specifically, I'll probably still want to knit them. That sounds like I'm saying that she's not a nice person and I don't like her, but I think she has such a fun personality, and I really enjoy watching her podcasts. I also love that she's quite vocal about size inclusivity and has really good practices in her designs when she's running test knits and thinking about grading and things, which I just want to support her because I think she is such a great designer and a part of this knitting community. So yeah, I ended up going with the Cara Wrap cardigan. Part of it is because I do want to support her and I think she is a person worthy of that support, but also because this was definitely my favorite type of wrap cardigan I'd seen out there that fit all of my criteria. So this is a beautiful set-in sleeve construction and it's all over stockinette, with this really nice dainty I-cord edging that goes all the way around the neck, and then it has I-cord ties at the sides. It also has an inside I-cord tie, and as you can see it looks a bit different. This is because I just knit it in the main yarn and I didn't hold it with the fluff, just to reduce a little bit of the bulk on the inside. The set-in sleeves are one of my favorite parts about this construction. I think they look so beautiful, they fit really well, and yeah, it just makes it like a really classy, elegant design overall. I knit this in 2 yarns held together. The main yarn is Knitting for Olive Merino in the colour Snowflake, and I held it with the Chaska Suri lace in like their off-white colour. They don't have a huge amount of different colours to select. I was really struggling to figure out what second strand I was going to hold with this. I knew I wanted to have a like fingering 8 merino and then a fluffy lace strand. I'm not someone who tolerates mohair particularly well, so I knew I would want a Suri alpaca to hold with it. And I have tried quite a few, and there are a few different ones that I know I can tolerate really well and I really like the feel of them. Not a lot of them have a plain white colour. Fibre States Cumulus was kind of like my first go-to, but they only have like a creamy off-white colour and like a bit of a beige colour and then a light pink, and none of them were really what I had envisioned. This was the closest that I could come to. And in certain lighting, especially in this direct sunlight that I'm looking at it now, you can definitely tell that the second strand is a lot more of a yellowy off-white than the bright white of the Knitting for Olive Merino. I'm not sure if you can tell here. I think it is a lot more obvious in person and only really in direct sunlight. But from a distance, and especially not in direct sunlight, I think overall it just looks like a really beautiful off-white colour, and you can't really tell that the 2 strands are like slightly different. If I knew that mohair wasn't going to bother me, I definitely would have picked the matching mohair. But honestly, I'd rather have something I'm more comfortable wearing that isn't, the exact right color than something that looks nice, but I'm just never going to wear because it's too itchy. So I knit the first size for the body, and I think I pretty much followed the pattern exactly and ended up doing the length of ribbing for the cropped version. There is also a longer length version for this pattern, and I think the main difference is you basically just knit longer ribbing at the bottom, but I was quite happy with how the length was looking with the shorter ribbing, and I think it also, suited the style of the cardigan a bit better. The sleeves is where I had a little bit of an issue. I have knit a set-in sleeve like this before on a different design, and I had so much trouble with that, and it's a little bit scarring. Basically, I think it's mainly a me problem with a combination of my tight gauge on small circumference and just my body shape. I think my arms are just a little bit bigger in proportion to like my bust size and my torso size. So the first time I knit the sleeve, I picked up stitches for the first size and used a 3.25mm needle and knit basically the whole sleeve, and got to the end of the instructions and tried it on, and I was like, this is feeling pretty tight and it's falling like way too short. It's probably like the middle of my forearm. And yeah, I just knew at that point I was gonna have to rip it out and redo it. In the past, I have done like mid-project blocks and thought, yeah, it will block out, it will be fine. Just trust the pattern, trust the process. But I think I've learned now that I just know when I need to rip it out and I should just go ahead and do it. So straight away, I just went ahead and changed 2 things to fix that. And it's nice to know that I have learned from previous errors where I would try and make it work with what I was doing and not really change anything and then be confused I was getting the same outcome. So I went up a needle size and went up a size in the pattern. So the sleeves are the size 2 instructions and knit on 3.5mm needles, and they fit absolutely perfectly. Actually, no, saying that, I did knit according to the pattern and got to the last decrease, and the sleeves were still quite a bit too short for me. So I think I ended up adding probably about this much extra length in stockinette to the sleeve, and then just did the same length of ribbing as written in the pattern. That's not super unusual to me. I think I do have slightly long arms, and I think because their sleeves are quite fitted, like they're intended to be quite fitted, you know, that just kind of makes it obvious when they're a little bit too short rather than having slightly more oversized, looser sleeves. Because I did have quite a bit of extra length to add on to the sleeve, I did just add in a few extra decreases at like regular intervals down the sleeve, kind of like what I was doing up here, just to make sure it would stay as a tapered sleeve and not just have like a bit of a weird angle at the end and yeah, look a little bit funny at the cuff. I think the sleeves are maybe slightly a tiny bit too long. However, I don't want to go back and shorten them because I'd rather have longer sleeves than too short sleeves. I can always cuff them, which I think looks quite cute, especially with this tiny bit of ribbing. And I do find that sometimes sleeves have tendency to shrink up a bit as you wear them, just as the fabric, you know, gets a little bit crinkled in your like elbow and, you know, just as you're wearing it. So yeah, basically I'm happy with how the sleeves are now, and I'm proud of myself for actually just thinking about what I've done previously with similar constructions. And now I know next time I knit a set and sleeve construction like this, I don't think I'm even going to bother following the pattern. I think I'm just straight away going to go up a size and up a needle size as well, just because, you know, that's 2 different designs and 2 different designers as well where that's happened to me. So it's clearly a me thing that I need to think about. So the fit of this is pretty much perfect. I'm really happy with the amount of ease that I get. The sleeves are super comfortable to wear. I will say that the cross of the neckline for me does sit a little bit too low to just be able to wear this by itself. I definitely have to wear a tank top or something underneath it. Obviously, if I do end up wearing this on my wedding day, I will have a dress underneath it, so that's not a problem. But if I was going to make another one, I think I would change the how rapid the neckline increases are and probably just do them a little bit quicker. Obviously, that does mean that then the length of this needs to be adjusted, and it's just something that I have to think about. The other thing I could also do, and I think Rebecca mentioned this in either a podcast or something, was about adding some shirring elastic into the I-cord here, just to cinch it in and bring it in a little bit. The only thing about that is I'm a bit reluctant about adding that in and having puckering in there. I think if you just do it, you know, a little bit and it's only a tiny bit, just to keep it like close to your body, it would be okay. But yeah, this does fall quite low, and the cross is like a little bit too low for me able to wear it by itself. I do find even on ready to wear wrap garments that, and like V-necks and things, that the V does tend to fall quite low on me. I have like mild scoliosis, so this part of my torso is like a little bit shorter than I think standard. So that's probably just a me thing. But if you're gonna wear this anyway as like a layering piece, like if you're gonna take it to the office and you just want something that you can put on over a t-shirt or a top, then I suppose it doesn't really matter anyway because you're always going to be wearing something underneath. But yeah, that is something good to bear in mind. So this is another really successful finished object. I'm really happy that I chose this pattern. I love this yarn combination. It is super soft and really nice to wear against skin. I'm not sure if I'll actually end up wearing it on my wedding day. If it's a really hot day, then absolutely no way am I going to wear this. But sometimes there in the evenings, because it is like pretty much in the bush and very close to the ocean, it can get a little bit breezy. When we were down over Christmas, even during the day, it would be super hot, like a 30-degree day. But then by the evening, I would want to put a jumper on if we were sitting outside. But regardless, I'm happy that I've knit something to commemorate this really big occasion. And yeah, if I end up wearing it, I do. If not, then that's okay. I've got something that I can wear on other occasions like anniversaries or even, you know, for bridal showers and things like that I have coming up. There was one other bridal knit that I knew I want to knit with the leftover yarn from my Cara Wrap cardigan, and I have also finished that. This is the Winter Clutch by Petite Knit. This will definitely get used on my wedding day. Even if I don't wear the Cara Wrap cardigan, at least I have something that I can, you know, put all my phone and my things in to carry with me on the day. It's a really cute little clutch bag and quite an old pattern, I think, of Petite Knits. The stitch pattern, I think, looks a lot more complicated than it is. I was surprised by how simple it was to do. It's pretty much just garter stitch and slip stitches, and yeah, obviously in the round that does mean that there is a decent amount of purling. It's also knit on 3mm needles, so it's a super tight gauge when you're using a fingering and like a lace weight held together. So the bottom is knit flat, and that went by very easily, and that was fine because it's garter. I was just, you know, there was no purling involved. But then the body of the bag is joined in the round, and that's where I was just noticing my hands were getting a little bit tired working on this. So I wasn't working on this for like extended periods of time. I was making sure to take breaks just because I didn't want to hurt my hands too much, and I wanted to enjoy knitting this. I didn't want to like force myself to keep going and not enjoy the knitting process. So yeah, I pretty much followed the pattern exactly as it was written. I didn't end up getting a chain to add on to this. I do want it to be more like a formal clutch bag, just like this. So I don't think for now I'm gonna add on the chain. I think it's something that will probably just more get in the way on the day, and I'll just want to be holding something. Of course, in the future, if I decide I want to add something on to make it a bit more practical day to day, I can always get something. I think a really dainty silver colored chain would look really nice with this off-white. The only thing about this that I don't particularly love is that you can see the hardware of the frame poking out here. I didn't get the one from Petite Knit's website. I just found some on Etsy that had, you know, cheaper delivery and were closer by to me, and I think overall were just a little bit cheaper. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not like the most ugly thing I've ever seen, and I think because it's silver it does kind of suit it, and I'll probably be wearing silver and like white gold jewelry on the day, so it's not the end of the world. But yeah, it's kind of annoying. It's not my favorite thing about this piece. Oh, the other thing is that I did end up lining it with this beautiful white satin fabric that is actually from my mum's wedding dress. I am sewing my own wedding dress, which is going really well, and it's in the final stages, which is very exciting. And parts of that dress are from my mum's wedding dress, so I did have her permission to cut it up, but I have quite a lot of this white satin fabric left that I'm not incorporating into my dress, so I thought it would be really nice and like the perfect fabric to use as the lining. It is super slippery and quite hard to sew, so I wasn't sure how well it had gone in, but it's literally just a bag lining. Like, no one but me is going to see it. I think I ended up doing a pretty decent job of it anyway, but I do like that it has that very personal touch in the lining. So those are my two bridal knits all finished, which is very exciting. Now moving on to my works in progress. Like I said, the winter clutch was a little bit hard wearing on my hands. It was at a tight gauge. This top was at a fairly tight gauge on small needles, and so was the Cara Wrap. So I was ready for something a bit different and, you know, give my hands something a little bit different to work on as well. This has been a plan for quite some time now, and I'm super excited that it's finally a work in progress and I can see it coming to life. It is my Cognac Cardigan. This is a beautiful design by Atelier Castin. Marin very kindly gifted me this pattern as a bit of a thank you, I think, for testing some of her previous designs, and also just because she is such a lovely person, and that's just a nice thing that she wanted to do. It's this gorgeous round neck cardigan that is intended to be knit at quite a loose gauge with like a fingering and like a lace weight fluffy strand to really fill in all the gaps and have this beautiful lightweight airy fabric. I have knit two of the sweater versions, but I haven't gotten around to knitting the cardigan until now, so I'm using these two yarns held together. So this is the Bendigo Woollen Mills Luxury 4-ply in the colour Frost, and I'm holding it with also the Chaska Suri lace in the pink colour. Again, they only have very limited colours, so it'll be very easy to find what colour this is. Ordinarily, I would never pair such a different coloured second strand with a white like this. I originally bought one ball of this, I think when I was doing swatching for the Cara Wrap cardigan. I think my local yarn store didn't have the white colour, but I just wanted to check gauge, so I ended up buying a pink and thought I will find something to do with a pink lace strand. And I did swatch it with the white color. I loved how that swatch came out and I thought it would be such a perfect cardigan, but it just wasn't the vision I had for my bridal cardigan. I am knitting this cardigan in the first size and I have gone down a needle size just to account for my gauge difference, and also because I think the Bendigo Woollen Mills is like a slightly heavier fingering weight yarn and it blooms up so lovely, which I think makes it perfect for this design, but I did want to just go down a needle size to make sure it wouldn't end up way too big once it had blocked. This is a beautiful contiguous shoulder construction, which kind of gives the illusion of a set-in sleeve, but everything is worked with these increases and shaping. It's also going to have this perfectly rounded neckline. I'm not doing it any justice without having the button bands on or anything, but I absolutely love the rounded neckline on the sweater version, so I'm looking forward to having something a little bit different. I'm not typically someone who goes for round neck cardigans. I've never owned one or knit one. Usually I wear V-neck cardigans, and previously I would only wear them open and use them a bit more like a layering piece, like a practical, you know, keep me warm layering piece. But after I had knit my Semper cardigan V-neck, I wore that so much before it got too hot with the buttons done up, like kind of just a sweater with a V-neck, and I really enjoyed styling that. I really surprised myself with how often I wore that. So I thought, you know what, I have this pattern, I have the yarn, I know I'm gonna like the fit of everything else, so I thought I would give it a go, and I think I'm gonna like it. Obviously it's too early to tell at the moment. I haven't, you know, been able to try this on with buttons or anything, but seeing as I like the sweater so much, I feel like this is going to fit into my wardrobe okay. And how could I say no to having a pink fluffy cardigan like this in my wardrobe? There are two options for the finishing on this design. You can either do the I-cord or a half twisted rib. I really struggled to make up my mind on this and I was definitely overthinking it, but in the end I do get more wear out of my half twisted rib version of the sweater, so that's kind of the only reason I ended up doing the same here. It does look like it's puckering a little bit and it looks like I haven't done the best job of the bind off, but once it's kind of stretched out, I think it will be okay, so I'm just going to hope that blocking fixes that up. I have just picked up the first sleeve and I'm working on this now. I'm kind of thinking maybe about going up a needle size for the sleeve just because I'm working at magic loop and I can feel my gauge getting a little bit tighter, especially because this is all worked flat. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to maybe do a little bit of a gauge check, although I can kind of see the stitches do look a little bit smaller on that little bit that I have knit. I feel like I should go with my gut here and just rip out those few rows and knit the sleeves on the 6mm. I'm gonna have to have a think about that, but yeah, probably will just end up doing that instead now I'm thinking about it. So not only does it work up fairly quickly, it also means that the yardage requirements are quite low for this. I am knitting the first size, and that did mean that I could get away with only ordering one of these like main skeins from Bendigo Woollen Mills. They're super generous, like 200-gram balls, so that's why I could, you know, only order one. The meterage on this is a little bit less than a typical fingering weight, so I think if I was knitting the second size or any of the larger ones, I would have definitely needed to dip into a second one. But for the first size, it's good that I could get away with just one. It's such a fun design to be able to experiment with different yarn combinations and potentially using a really special like 2 skeins of hand-dyed yarn, which I've done before, or like a hand-dyed Suri or mohair would be really fun. Or it can also just be like a really economical project to have, which is kind of what this one is for. My budget is pretty tight at the moment, so this has ended up being quite an affordable project for me, which is perfect for this stage of my life. I'm also obviously having a lot of fun with pairing like a different colored second strand with like just a plain white main yarn. So yeah, I think it's just a really fun opportunity to experiment with different fibers potentially and different colors as well, and mix and match and see how they turn out. So that's kind of like my main work in progress at the moment, but I have found myself reaching for another longer term whip that I've had on the needles for a few months now. This is my Sweet Shop blanket. It is a super popular design by Penrose. I'm sure it does not need a huge introduction. A lot of people have knit this, and I think for such a good reason. It is like, for me, the absolute perfect scrappy project. So obviously I'm holding my scrap yarns with this white, which is also from Bendigo Woollen Mills. It is their luxury base, but the 8-ply version, and in the same frost color as my Cognac Cardigan. I'm so pleased that I went for a neutral white color like this to pair all of my colorful scraps with. It makes this an aesthetically pleasing scrappy project in my opinion. I think it just makes it less chaotic to look at, but it's still really fun and it has those bright colors. but it kind of ties everything together in a bit more of like a less, you know, overwhelming way. I think that was kind of the intention of this design, was that you can use up all your scraps in a project, but have something to keep it a little bit more toned down and tie it all together in a way. Of course, it did mean that I had to purchase yarn to hold with my scraps, but I totally think it was worth it, and the Bendigo Woolen Mills is a very cost-effective yarn anyway, so once I had the budget for it, I did purchase it, and I'm so glad I did. This is such a nice project to work on. Here is a bit of an overview on where I am up to. It's one of those designs that you can pretty much just keep knitting until you're happy with the size of it. It does have like suggested sizes in there, so you know how much of the main colour you might need to buy or have in your stash. So I think I'm going to aim for the second largest one, which is a rectangular size, but I'm just going to keep knitting until I like the size of it, or until I run out of scraps or run out of the main yarn. It does have slip stitches all across the border like this, so you can pretty much just finish whenever you want, but that also means that you can pick it up in the future and add to it if you want to. You can also do an I-cord border around the edge, which I think would look really nice, but I think that does limit you on being able to add to it in the future, so I'm thinking I will just keep it as it is with the slip stitches around the edge. I haven't been working on this a huge amount lately, and I can't really remember where it was up to when I last shared it. I did pick it up yesterday to finish off this last pink square here, as it had been sitting kind of like half finished for quite a while, and I thought if I want to share it on the podcast, I don't want to have the needles clanging around, and I think it does look better when each square is finished. But then this morning I just kind of like picked up another colour, ended up doing this brown square. I really like these two colours together. I think it kind of looks like a Neapolitan ice cream. But yeah, I'm trying not to overthink the placement of all of these colours. It is just a blanket and it is meant to be scrappy and like a little bit chaotic, but you know, I want it to look nice. I am just trying to like not put too dark colours or too many light colours, like two pinks together or something like that. But yeah, I'm trying not to overthink it too much and just going for it and seeing how it turns out. It's definitely more of a longer term project, and I went into this just assuming it would take me at least a year or so. Like I said, I haven't really been working a huge amount on it, mainly because it's just been way too hot to be working on a blanket, and like it's kind of almost at the size now where I'm covered by wool as I'm working on it. I think it will also be nice to set this aside until winter comes around and it does get a little bit colder and I can cozy up under this as I'm working on it. But yeah, this is just something I'm picking up and putting it down whenever I feel like it. I think each square, like each section, takes me about an hour, so it's enough to like sit down and get invested and get into it, and also like watch an episode of something or watch an episode of someone's podcast. But it's not like I need to like sit down and get through a huge amount of knitting in one go and like have to really motivate myself to work on it. It's yeah, just like a perfect project to pick up and put down. So I have one final kind of a work in progress. I just need to like voice out my thoughts on this and decide what I'm gonna do. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you may remember this yarn. My parents brought this back for me when we went back to England, and that would have been this time last year. So this has been in stash for a year, and that is definitely long enough to finally put it into a project. I wasn't there when they bought it. They did send me photos, and they bought me 2 skeins of this, and it is like a super bright hot pink colour, which is not something I would normally choose, but I thought I'd try something a little bit different, and I think that's backfired a little bit because I have been struggling to figure out what I want to knit with it. It's kind of like an in-between a DK and a worsted weight as well, and I only have these 2. I think they're 165 meters each, so it's kind of like an awkward amount as well. But yeah, I've just been struggling to find a pattern that I like and that I think I would wear, and I also think this colour is making that difficult. So originally I did try and knit a pair of loungewear shorts out of this, and I got like a decent amount of the way through. As you can see, all of this yarn has been knit before, and I think I dipped into the second one. I was knitting them, I think, on 3.5mm needles. It was just a little bit too tight of a gauge for it to be comfortable with the thickness of this yarn, and it is, I think, 100% bamboo, 97% eucalyptus fibre, 3% other wood fibres, so I don't really know what that means. But yeah, there's no elasticity to it, so yeah, 3.5mm needles was way too tight of a gauge for this yarn. I also was pretty sure I was just going to run out of yarn, and yeah, I just didn't want that stress to be keep on knitting it, not really enjoying it, and then not have enough yarn to knit them to like a proper length. So at the end of last year I did finally frog that project, and I did a bit of swatching. I looked through my pattern library and my options, and I thought a Tolsta Tank, also by Rebecca Clow, would be a good option. I did end up casting that on and made like a pretty good amount of progress through the body. It is knit bottom up and it's a great pattern. You have, I think, 3 different neckline options, but they're all knit bottom up and they're all knit the same until you need to figure out like how you're splitting for the front and back, so you don't have to decide when you cast on. You can just like see what the yarn is telling you that it should be. So I was thinking about, yeah, doing one of those versions. But as I've been knitting this, I'm like, do I actually want a hot pink, like loose gauge knit tank top in my wardrobe? Like, am I actually going to wear this? After reflecting on my summer knits and then having this as such a success because I actually thought about the color, I thought about the yarn, the gauge and everything, I was like, I just don't think I'm actually going to wear this. It's just going to sit in my wardrobe and I'm going to feel really sad when I see the yarn in a project that is just collecting dust. So yeah, this is on the needles for now, but pretty sure it's going to get frogged. And I think I might go back to the shorts idea. I do really like the idea of having a really comfy, soft pair of loungewear shorts. I've knit myself a pair of shorts before and I was actually wearing them this morning. They're super comfy. It's a fingering weight, I think like a cotton and bamboo yarn. So they're super soft and they stretched out a whole bunch and I would never leave the house in them, but they are like the comfiest pajama loungewear shorts. So I think it's about time I knit a second pair. And yeah, I just think it would be a perfect use for this yarn. So my plan is to probably just freestyle a pattern. I did use a pattern for the first pair of shorts. It's not a very good pattern. I wouldn't really recommend it. And I don't think it was even on Ravelry. I don't even know how I found that pattern. I think I'm going to try and go for like a similar construction because I do like the fit. But obviously I'm going to have to knit them completely off gauge and probably just do my own numbers and method, but have them based loosely on that pattern. Basically, you just cast on the waistband and then kind of like a raglan, you create like a faux seam down the center front and the center back and then split off for the legs and then just knit a little bit on the legs. I'm thinking I might use this as like a massive gauge swatch just to, yeah, figure out the numbers and see what I want to do. I think this will probably be a pretty good density. Maybe it's slightly on the loose side for a pair of shorts, but yeah, like I said, my priority for this project is absolute comfort. And if they're a little bit see-through, I'm only going to be wearing them at home. So that's why this hasn't been frogged yet, because I think I'm just going to use this, like I said, as a gauge swatch and then figure out how many stitches I want to cast on for the shorts. I have seen that Nettie Natty is knitting the Beachcomber flares. In one of her recent podcast episodes, she spoke about knitting shorts and pants with negative ease, and that's something I think I'm going to keep in mind. I think a little bit of negative ease could be better and help the fit and make sure that they don't just keep falling down. I could also obviously put a little bit of elastic in the waistband like you would if you were sewing a pair of shorts. And I'll probably end up putting like an I-cord tie or something, or ribbon or something in there as well. So I have a few options and a few things to think about. But yeah, I think I feel better about knitting these into a pair of shorts. I'll probably eventually come back to the Tolsta Tank. I especially like the square neck version. Definitely after knitting this one, I think I will eventually knit a square neck Tolsta Tank. But for now, this is just not meant to be, and it's, yeah, not really speaking to me. So we're going to frog this and go back to square one. So those are my 2/3 works in progress. And I have one final thing to share, which I suppose fits into acquisitions. But I have these 2 skeins of really fun yarn. They may look a little bit unassuming, like a bit of a brownie pink yarn, but I dyed these myself. I bought an Ashford yarn dyeing kit sometime last year or the year before, and I did give it a go eventually, thinking maybe I would want to get into yarn dyeing, but yeah, it didn't really work. I didn't really have the proper setup, and it was quite labor intensive, which I don't mind, but it just wasn't something that I really enjoyed. But it did give me a good appreciation for yarn dyes and how much work actually goes into it. It was a bit of a fail because I didn't have like a big enough pan or something to be able to lay the yarn out. It ended up a little bit splotchy, and yeah, you can kind of still see a few of the bright pink and blue parts that are in this yarn. I had every intention to go back and like retry dyeing them and do a better job of it. but these had been sitting here for, yeah, over a year I think at that point, and I just figured it was probably never going to happen. Whenever I would have the time to dye yarn, I'd probably just end up using that time for something else. So I figured this yarn definitely needed to be, you know, used up and somehow made into something that I would want to knit. As part of like a wedding side project, I had a friend gift me a whole bunch of white cotton napkins that she had for her wedding and didn't end up using them, but did ask me if I wanted to dye them like a dusty pink color with avocado peels. She'd done it before and she showed me a photo of how they came out, and I was like, that's perfect, that's exactly the color that I want. And it was a really fun introduction into natural dyeing as well. It was a little bit of a time-consuming process, but obviously because I was doing it with a friend, it was just like a fun activity that we could do and just catch up over as well. You also need quite a lot of avocados to do it, and luckily one of her family members works at like a Mexican chain restaurant here, so they just put aside a whole bunch of avocado peels that would have gone in the bin anyway. So that's a good way if you wanted to do some dyeing with avocados but didn't want to wait for months to save them up. Maybe go to a restaurant and see if they can put some aside for you. So she came over and we did one batch of the dyeing of napkins, and then I did another batch in the same dye bath. You do have to reheat it before you reuse it. So I did that again for the rest of the napkins, but I could still see that there was like a little bit of a colour in the water, and I just thought I would throw these in there and see what happened. These have come out a little bit, I'd say, browner and a bit darker than the napkins have. It's definitely not like the light dusty pink that the cotton came up as. That's absolutely fine. This was a total experiment and I didn't really have, you know, high stakes on what I wanted this yarn to become anyway. I was definitely expecting you to be able to see some of the previous dye that I had put on there, but I'm actually quite impressed about how well it covered it up. I was expecting it to be a lot more obvious. I do think the darker colour was just because this is, I assume, a wool yarn. The kit didn't come with any labels for these skeins, so I have no idea what the composition is. I assume it's some kind of superwash wool, but I'm not even sure if there's nylon in there, so I don't know if it would be okay to use for socks. So that brings us to what I'm going to use these skeins for. Because I'm not sure if there is nylon in there, I don't really feel comfortable using it for socks, and I would also just have heaps of leftovers, and I don't know how many pairs of socks I would really want in the same colour. So my current long-term plan, and it's probably not an immediate cast on, is to find some kind of mohair or like Suri strand to pair with these, or maybe even a second like fingering weight strand in a wool. But yeah, just something to pair with these to make it go a little bit further and be able to knit either like a lento sweater, a cognac sweater, another cognac cardigan or something like that, where I know I can get away with just 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. I think that would be a perfect option as well, because this colour is probably not something I would wear by itself. I just think it clashes with my skin tone and it's just not really my favourite colour to wear. I think it is a nice colour, but yeah, just not on me. Someone like my mum with more olive skin would look absolutely amazing in a colour like this. Maybe I can make something for her. Maybe I will ask her if she would wear something in this colour. That's actually a good idea. But anyway, I think I would probably want to find a second strand either way. So if it's something for myself, I think I would pair it with a lighter or like a darker, maybe more purpley or pinky second strand, just to like skew the colour one way or the other. If it's for my mum, maybe I can just find something that has a good colour match and ask her if she would like a sweater or a cardigan or something. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was a really good experiment to try, and it definitely has made me think about doing more natural dyeing. I think you can do a different colour if you use the pits of the avocado. I'm sure it is a huge rabbit hole that you could dive down of different ways to do natural dyeing. But yeah, it was a really good introduction, and I have, you know, a whole bunch of napkins that I can use for our wedding, and also managed to get some really pretty yarn out of it. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I have been speaking for way too long, but I feel like I managed to share everything pretty succinctly, considering I had quite a lot to share. Hopefully I didn't miss out anything important, but you know, let me know if you have any questions on any of these projects. As always, I would love to hear what you've been working on and what you're enjoying knitting at the moment, and if you've ever tried dyeing anything with natural dyes, I would love to hear your experience or suggestions on what I can do with this yarn. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!